Welcome back to another episode of RC CAD to VR. Terrence here, so glad to have you back on board. In this episode, we're going to be adding longerons and stringers to the model that we've been working on in this series. Let's discuss a little bit about longerons and stringers. A lot of people get them confused and use them interchangeably, but there is a little bit of a distinction between the two. Structurally, they roughly function the same way. They provide longitudinal support to the aircraft. However, stringers are typically short and they connect between the individual formers, whereas longerons are more like spars in the sense that they run much longer along the fuselage and transfer the loads from the skins being placed on the aircraft over several formers within the aircraft. Now, if you were doing stringers, you would also need to have more stringers around the actual circumference of the body of the aircraft. And the reason for that is you're actually placing more loads in a more confined area. And that's not necessarily something that we want to do in a model aircraft because that's adding unnecessary weight. So more often than not, what we're actually referring to when we say stringers are longerons. Now I'm going to show you how to model both of those in this particular tutorial. One last thing before getting into the tutorial. This particular episode is being shot in January of 2021. And as you know, there's a lot going on and it's actually rather stressful during this time, which has made actually kind of being, enthusiastic or wanting to dive into something that's fun a little bit more challenging. And I'm sure many of you are experiencing much the same thing. That being said, there is always something positive to focus on. And I've got to say, the RC community from all over the world has been tremendous in helping support this channel by way of contribution or tip from my tip jar on rccad2vr.com. I want to send a huge thank you out to Bob Howen of Michigan, of Alan of Oregon, Gary Glassband of California, Robert Hansen of Tennessee, and Andrew Wright of the United Kingdom. Guys, your very generous tips have been an absolute bright spot in everything that's been going on and is definitely an encouraging thing to want to really continue in pursuing this hobby. Now, down here are a couple of more names of also people that have made contributions. To those, I also want to say thank you so much. Everything is going directly back into this channel so I can continue bringing you more content. So with that being said, let's kind of put the outside world away and let's get into actually finishing one of the main components of designing our airplane, which is longerons and stringers. Let's get started. All right, in this example, I'm going to be using the empennage section of the L1011 model that I've been working on. And what I want to do is I actually want to create a longeron that goes from the bulkhead all the way to about here where the horizontal stabilizer is about the midsection. Now, the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the sketch tool, and you guys should now be fairly comfortable with using the sketch tool. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a construction plane, and I'm going to select the plane along a path. The reason we're using the plane along the path is because what I want to do is I want to make sure that when we add this longeron that it's at the correct angle of the fuselage. So let's go ahead and select plane along a path. Then I think I would like to put a longeron roughly through here. So what I'm going to do is from the bulkhead here up front is I'm going to select right about here and then press OK. Now you can see we've got our construction plane that's there, and I'm just going to pull this out a little bit so it's easier to see. You don't have to do this, but it's just something that makes it a little bit easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new sketch, and I can use Shift D to activate new sketch, or you can press up here to select or create a new sketch, and then let's go ahead and click on that to activate it. Now, one quick thing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the orbit center to right about here. That'll make it easier to orbit around while we're working in the sketch, and that's about the midpoint but where the longeron is going to go. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to use the intersect tool. So if the intersect tool isn't up here, you can create and then down in project and then select intersect. Now what we're going to do is going to seem a little bit counterintuitive, but it'll make sense once we get a little bit further along. We're going to create these intersection points along the fuselage, but only on one side of the former. So I'm going to select the outer one, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select the latter side, or the back side of the former. So we're just going to go through here really quick, and we're going to add those in all the way to here. Let's see, there it is. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're also going to do the same thing with the interior. So we're going to add these in like that. And let's see, there we go. And one right there. Now we also need to do the interior rear of that. So right there, coming all the way through. See right there. And two more to go. There we go. And right there. Now this is the part where I said it seems to be a little bit counterintuitive because we didn't actually create points all the way around each former. And there's a reason for that. Because we're working on a curved shape, we need to make sure that our curve, when we connect these, actually has the curvature or the shape of the fuselage. So for now I'm going to turn off the formers and the bulkheads so that way we're not looking at them. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start connecting the outer portion of this. So using the fit point spline tool, we're going to go ahead and connect all of these like so. And this tool will automatically create the natural curvature that needs to be there. And then click the little green checkbox. Now, this is the part where we need to actually make a couple of decisions. The reason we did 2 points on the interior is because that is a flat surface, and we're going to use that when we do some offset lines later on. So for now though, we're going to close this up. So we're going to click here and close that up. And then what we're going to do with this is we're actually going to extend past this line, which is okay. The one thing that we need to make sure of is that this little perpendicular little icon is visible. And you can see it goes away when I click away. And that tells you right there that this line is perpendicular to that, which is what we want. And then select that. And then we're going to just go ahead and run through. Now you'll notice that I'm double clicking to activate that because I want these lines or these splines to all be individual splines. You don't have to do it that way, but if you need to work on an individual segment, this makes it a lot simpler and you don't have to do breaks later on. So this just ensures that we don't have to go through those extra steps later on down the road. So I'm just gonna get this wrapped up here all the way to the end. Double click on each one of these to get them closed up. All right, and then this right here. All right, and like we did before, I'm going to pull this out and accept that, and then connect these. Perpendicular, yes. Let's see here. I'm going to connect that. Come out here. Yep, good to go there. And there we go. We've only got, what, 2 or 3 more to go. Pretty easy stuff here. Now, one quick note, I did extend the lines past, and we're going to trim those. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that, but I'm doing this to introduce you to another feature, which is the trim feature in the sketch tool. And this helps you clean up a lot of the areas that you're not going to need. So you don't have to do what I'm getting ready to do. What you can actually do is just snap to that line and continue that way. But for the sake of actually learning a new tool and a new feature within Fusion 360, I'm going to extend these lines a little bit further out, and then we're going to come back and clean them up. All right, let's continue. What we do to clean it up is we simply use the trim tool, or if it's not in your menu up here, if you click on Modify drop-down, the trim tool is there. And then all we're going to do is we're just going to go through here and clean this up. And that's going to ensure that all of these lines are closed up correctly. Just like that. Okay, now the next thing that we need to do is we need to create a center line through here, which is the way that we're going to create slots in order to connect to our formers. Now, the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use the line tool, and you're going to come down through here until you snap and see this little triangle right here. That triangle is the indicator that you are now at the midpoint of that particular line. So click on that, and then you're going to click across, and it's going to try to give you the triangle again, but you don't want that. What you want is you want to find where you're going to be perpendicular. So let me cancel out of this and get a little bit closer, because on some of these, they're going to be very, very close. And we want to make sure that I'm perpendicular to, there we go. There, let's see. Where did you go? All right, so this isn't perfect, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this constraint, and this constraint is basically saying I want it to the center point of this. However, this might be off by just a hair, so go ahead and delete that, and then we're going to use the parallel tool. The parallel tool allows you to say that you want this particular line to be parallel to that, and that now you can see you've got the little parallel constraint icon here letting you know that this line is now parallel to this one. So let's go ahead and continue with getting these in place. Now, the reason that it's important that we use the interior, let's see here, yeah, it's still wanting to snap to that. The reason we're using the interior line here as our parallel is because this line out here, as you can see, it's actually not a perpendicular line through here and here. And that's why we needed to have this as a reference for our inner line here. So let's go ahead and make sure those are parallel. And if you missed it, I removed the center constraint in order to make it parallel. If you don't do that, it won't allow you to add that particular constraint to it. So let's see here. We're going to continue working through here. So center line here. And we're going to find where we snap to be perpendicular. And it looks like it's wanting to snap there, which we know is not perfect. One of the reasons why I want this to be this way is because if we have any dangly areas once we cut our formers, this will ensure that when we extrude to pull out, we can get a good clean cut out of it. So let's go ahead and do this next one. There we go. And now you can see we're snapping in. So there is the center point. However, just a little bit further, we get the perpendicular icon right there. So now we don't have to worry about added constraints. It's going to get a little bit easier as we move down this longeron, because these lines are actually no longer the same length. So this line right here is a different length from this one, and they're slightly off, as you can see. So it's going to be much easier now to get that that line in place. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. There we go. Find that. Perfect. And we're going to come into here, and there we go. All right, so now we've pretty much sketched out our longeron. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to create that component. And the way we're going to do that is we're simply going to select the pieces we want to extrude. Now remember, to select multiple, what we're going to do is we're going to hold down the Shift key. So select and then hold Shift all the way through, and we're going to select these outer portions, like so. And at the line, we want that, and there we go. So now you can see we've got our selections. Now using the E key for extrude, we're going to extrude this. Now, because we're working on an angle, we don't want to extrude just in one direction because we will get a lot of overhang that is actually protruding outside of the former. So what we're going to use is we're going to use symmetric as our direction, which when we put in our distance, it's actually going to make it equal on both sides. So I'm going to go 1.5 millimeters. And if you look in here, if it's going to let me zoom, there we go. You can see now that we are actually moving in two directions off of the construction plane or the surface area of where our sketch actually is. And now we're going to go ahead and create a new component from this. Now this is the first time in this series that I've recommended doing a component, and this is actually going to be important for later episodes, because components are going to allow us to do some of the extra things that we need to do when we actually start needing to work with these outside of Fusion 360. So let's go ahead and click OK. And now you can see at the bottom of our browser, we've got this new component. And I'm just going to go ahead and call this one Longeron 1. And we're going to zoom out here and turn off this sketch for now. And now you can see we have got a slotted longeron. And when we turn on our bulkheads and our formers, the only thing that's left now is to create the fit for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in here. And one of the things you'll notice is right here, our former is actually protruding past the longeron. That's not a big deal. This is why it was so important that we made a parallel line inside of the former, where we were able to get this nice clean shape there. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Combine tool, which you can find in the Modify tool under Combine, or you can hold Shift B, and that will bring up that menu. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say the target body is the former. That's what we're wanting to make an adjustment to. The tool is going to be the longeron. And now you can see here that it's actually cutting inside of that longeron. Make sure you have Keep Tool selected, or else if you don't, your tool will go away, which is the longeron. We don't want that. So go ahead and press OK. And then let's go ahead and hide that longeron for a second. And now you can see in here we've got this little dangly area that we've got. And we don't want that. So we're going to just clean that up really quick by selecting the face of the inside of the former where the longeron is going to rest. Press E for extrude, and we're just going to pull this out, and it's going to automatically cut that and clean that out. And now you can see we've got our slot for where our longeron fits. And just to see how this actually works, I'm going to go ahead and select, press M for move, and I'm going to set my pivot point here so that we're moving in a direction that makes logical sense. And let's go ahead and pull this out of there. And now you can see we have got perfect fitting longeron to former. And cancel that. And all you have to do then is continue that process throughout the entire set. So I'm going to cut this, say OK, and then I'm going to cut that with this. Press OK, And then I'm gonna hide this again because we've got some overflow here. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear those out like so. Get that. And extrude, pull that out. And now you can see we've got our slots in place, 3 of them, for our longeron. Now what about stringers though? Stringers, we can use the same exact sketch, but we're going to add a little more detail to it. So let's go ahead and turn on our sketch, double click it to activate it, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a stringer through here. So let's go ahead and zoom into this area. And I'm going to turn off these formers so they don't distract us. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an offset from here by using the offset tool. And we're going to go, I'm going to use mine as 1.5. And then what you can do also, instead of using the offset tool up here, because we've just used it, you can also right click on the on your mouse, and you can select repeat offset, and that'll allow you to use the tool again. This time I'm going to go -1.5 to go in the other direction. And to make sure that these are actually closed, all you have to do is put your mouse over it. You can see that yes, these are actually closed because you can select them individually. And then finally what we're going to do is we're going to go right through here to the midpoint of each of these, and let's check to make sure that these are all closed. Yes, we're good to go. And then we're going to repeat that with this one. So we're going to right click. No, guess not. Let's do it this way. There we go. 1.5. And now we should have it. There we go. Repeat offset -1.5. And yes, they're closed. And then one last thing is we're going to go from the center, snapping so we get the little triangle, and down to there. And then escape out of that tool, and then double check to make sure these are correct. And they are. So what we're going to do is we're going to select that tab, the body of the stringer, and this tab. And you've probably already guessed it. What we're going to do is we're going to press E for extrude, and we're going to use the symmetric again. And we're going to create a new component, and we're going to go 1.5 millimeters in each direction. Let's try that again, 1.5 millimeters in each direction, and press OK. Now let's turn on our formers again. And now you can see, I'm going to turn off this sketch. Now you can see we've got an individual stringer. Now the last thing that we have to do is we have to actually accommodate the tab that we created. These tabs need to be actually cut into the formers. So what we're going to do is we're going to again do Shift B or press the combine option out of the menu. And I'm going to select the former. And what I want to do is a cut, and this is my tool, and I want to make sure I keep the tool and press OK. And then we're going to do the same thing for this former and press OK. Now let's go ahead and name this one Stringer 1. And now if we hide Stringer 1, you'll notice we have got the slot where that stringer is going to go. However, we're probably going to want to put the stringer on the other side as well, and because we're going to probably be cutting this with laser or CNC or printing on paper, this needs to actually go all the way through. So what we're going to do is we're going to select that, press extrude, and press it on through, like so. And we're going to do the same thing here. Now, this is something that could have been done in the sketch by selecting, let's see here, let's turn off the formers. We could have done it this way by selecting the entire set. That would have been another way to do it. However, it depends on how you actually plan on doing so. So let's go ahead, turn our longeron back on. And we can see we've got that in place right there, and formers. And that is how you add longerons and stringers to your airplane. All right, as you can see, there is nothing to adding longerons and stringers to our model. As a matter of fact, I would probably say many of you thought that this was going to be way more complicated than it actually ended up being, considering that some of the previous episodes were very in-depth and pretty lengthy. This one's actually much shorter. Now, before you click away, I want to announce that the next episode is probably the most anticipated episode that I get asked about actually fairly often, which is how do we get this 3D model out of Fusion 360 and into something that we can actually manufacture? Well, that's going to be the next episode. I'm going to show you how you can get these shapes out of Fusion 360 and into a format where you can use with either a CNC machine, with a laser cutter, or if you're going to use paper, which many of you actually are doing, where people are printing these shapes onto sheets of paper and then gluing them to foam and cutting out the shapes. Well, that's going to be the next episode. But until then, take care.